I'm sure we'll hear more details from him. He was the lead detective on the case." She looked over at me. She had something here. Something good. Here's the kicker, Alex. According to my source, the woman believes her attackers were vampires. Chapter 21. We met with Gloria Dos Santos at the police station in the Brentwood section of L.A. It was a one-story concrete building, about as nondescript as a post office. Detective Peter Kim joined us in a small interview room, which was about 6 by 5 feet, soundproof, with padded walls. Kim was slender, around 6 feet, in his late 20s. He dressed well and seemed more like an up-and-coming Los Angeles business executive than a policeman to me. Gloria Dos Santos obviously knew Kim, and they didn't seem too fond of each other. She called him Detective Furman, and she used the name over and over until Kim told her to can it, or he would lock her the hell up. Dos Santos wore a short black dress, high black boots, leather wristbands. There were about a dozen earrings in strategic locations on her body. Her frizzy black hair was piled high, but some also cascaded down to her shoulders. She was only an inch or two over 5 feet and had a hard face. Her lashes were thick with mascara, and she used purple eyeshadow. She looked to be in good physical shape, like all the other victims so far. She stared at Kim, then at me, and finally at Jamila Hughes. She shook her head and smirked. She didn't like us, which was fine. I didn't much like her either. She sneered. "Can I smoke in this rat trap? I'm going to smoke, like it or not. If you don't like it, then I'm going to hell home." "So smoke," Kim said. "But you're not going home under any fucking circumstances." He took out some David Ranch-style sunflower seeds and started to eat them. Kim was a strange boy himself. Dos Santos lit up a Camel and blew out a thick stream of smoke in Kim's face. "Detective Furman knows everything that I know. Why don't you just get it all from him? He's brilliant, you know. Just ask him about it. Graduated with some Kuma honors from UCLA. "There are a few things we aren't clear about," I said to her. "That's why we came all the way from San Francisco to see you. Actually, I came from Washington, D.C. "Long trip for nothing, Shaft," she said. Gloria Dos Santos had a zinger for every occasion. She wiped her hand over her face a few times, as if she were trying to wake herself up. "You're obviously high as a kite," Jamila cut in. "That doesn't matter to us. Relax, girl. These men who attacked you hurt you pretty bad." Dos Santos snorted. "Pretty bad? They broke 2 ribs, broke my arm. They knocked me down about 6 times. Fortunately, they knocked me right down a goddamn hill. Side of a mountain, actually. I started rolling, got up, ran my ass off." "The initial report said that you didn't see either of them very well. Then you claimed that they were in their 40s or 50s. She shrugged. "I don't know. It was foggy. That's an impression I had. Earlier that night, I went to the Fang Club on West Pico. It's the only place where you can meet real vampires and live to tell about it. So they say. I was going to a lot of goth clubs back then. Stigmata, Coven 13, Vampiricus over in Long Beach. I worked at Necromane." "What's Necromane?" she asked, as if it were a question we would want answered. She was right. "Necromane is a boutique for people who are really into the dead. You can buy real human skulls there. Fingers, toes, a full human skeleton if that's your thing." "It's not," Jamila said. "But I've been to a shop like that in San Francisco. It's called the Coroner." The girl looked at her contemptuously. "So I'm fucking impressed? Oh, you must be very cool. You must live right on the edge." I spoke again. "We're trying to help you. She cut me off. "Bullshit. You're trying to help yourselves. You've got another big case. Those kinky murders in San Francisco, right? I can read, man. You could care less about Gloria Dos Santos and her problems. I got lots of them. More than you know. Who gives a shit, right?" 2 people were killed in Golden Gate Park. It was a massacre. Did you read that? "We think it might be the same men who attacked you," I told her. "Yeah, well, let me tell you something you better get straight. The 2 men who attacked me were vampires. Got that? I know this is impossible for you to wrap your little minds around, but there are vampires. They set themselves apart from the human world. That means they aren't like you. 2 of them almost killed me. They were hunting in Beverly Hills. They kill people every fucking day in L.A. They drink their blood. They call it feeding. They chew on their bones like it's KFP. That's Kentucky Fried People, chumps. I can see you don't believe me. Well, believe me. The door to the interview room opened quietly. A uniformed patrolman popped in and whispered something to Detective Kim. Kim frowned and looked at us, then at Dos Santos. There was a killing on Sunset Boulevard a short time ago. Someone was bitten and then hanged at one of the better hotels. Gloria Dos Santos' face twisted horribly. Her eyes grew small and very angry. She flew into a rage, started to scream at the top of her voice. "They followed you here, you assholes! Don't you get it? They followed you! Oh my God, they know I talked to you! Oh Jesus Christ, they'll get me! You just got me killed!" Part 2. Bloodlust. Chapter 22. I always liked working tough murder cases with Kyle Craig, so I was glad that he would be joining Jamila Hughes and me in Los Angeles later that day. I was surprised, however, when I saw Kyle already at the murder scene in Beverly Hills when we arrived. The body had been found at the Chateau Marmont, the hotel where John Belushi had overdosed and died. The hotel looked like a French castle and rose 7 stories over the Sunset Strip. As I entered the lobby, I noticed that everything looked to be authentic 1920s, but dated rather than antique. Supposedly, a studio boss once told the actor William Holden, "If you have to get into trouble, do it at the Chateau Marmont." Kyle met us at the door of the hotel room. His dark hair was slicked back, and it looked as if he'd gotten a little sun. Unusual for Kyle. I almost didn't recognize him. "This is Kyle Craig, FBI, I told Jamila. Before I met you, he was the best homicide investigator I ever worked with." Kyle and Jamila shook hands. Then we followed him into the hotel room. Actually, it was a hillside bungalow. 2 bedrooms, a living room with a working fireplace. It had its own private street entrance. The crime scene was as depressingly bad as the others. I recalled something typically pessimistic that a philosopher had written. I'd once had this same thought at a grisly crime scene in North Carolina. Human existence must be a kind of error. It is bad today, and every day it will get worse, until the worst of all happens. My own philosophy was a little cheerier than Schopenhauer's, but there were times when he seemed on the mark. The worst of all had happened to a 29-year-old record company executive named Jonathan Mueller, and in the worst possible way. There were bites on his neck. I didn't see any knife cuts. Mueller had been hung from a lighting fixture in the hotel room. His skin was waxy and translucent, and I didn't think he had been dead very long. The 3 of us moved closer to the hanging body. It was swaying slightly and still dripping blood. "The major bites are all in his neck," I said. "It looks like role-playing vampires again. The hanging has to be their ritual, maybe their signature." "This is so goddamn creepy," Jamila whispered. "This poor guy had the blood sucked out of him. It almost looks like a sex crime." "I think it is," Kyle said. "I think they seduced him first." Just then the cell phone in the pocket of my jacket went off. The timing couldn't have been worse. I looked at Kyle before I answered the call. "It could be him," I said. "The mastermind." I put the receiver to my ear. "How do you like L.A., Alex?" the mastermind asked in his usual mechanical drone. "The dead pretty much look the same everywhere, don't they?" I nodded at Kyle. He understood who was on the line. The mastermind. He motioned for me to give him the phone, and I handed it over. I watched his face as he listened, then frowned deeply. Kyle finally took the phone away from his ear. "He broke off the connection," he said. "It was like he knew you weren't on the line anymore." "How did he know, Alex? How does the bastard know so much? What the hell does he want from you?" I stared at the slowly revolving corpse, and I didn't have any answers. None at all. I felt drained myself. Chapter 23. It was already Friday, and we were in the middle of a nasty, sordid mess that wasn't going to be over soon. In the afternoon, I had to make a tough phone call home to Washington. Nana Mama answered after a couple of rings, and I immediately wished that one of the kids had picked up instead. "It's Alex. How are you?" She said, "You're not coming home for Damon's concert tomorrow, are you, Alex? Or did you forget all about the concert already? Oh, Alex, Alex, why have you forsaken us? This isn't right." I love Nana tremendously, but sometimes she goes too far to make her point. "Why don't you put Damon on the phone?" I said. "I'll talk to him about it." "He's not going to be a boy for very much longer. Pretty soon he'll be just like you, won't listen to a word anybody says. Then you'll see what it's like. I guarantee you won't like it," she said. "I feel bad enough already, guilty enough. You don't have to make it worse, old woman." "Of course I do. That's my job, and I take it as seriously as you obviously take yours," she said. "Nana, people are dying out here. Someone died a horrible death in Washington to get me involved in this mess. It keeps happening. There's a connection I have to find, or at least try to." "Yes, people are dying, Alex. I understand that. And other people are growing up without their father around as much as they need him to be, especially since they don't have a mother. Are you aware of that? I can't be mother and father to these children." I shut my eyes. "I hear what you're saying. I don't even disagree with you, believe it or not. Now, would you please put Damon on?" I ask again. "As soon as I get off the phone, I'll go out and see if I can find a mother for my children. Actually, I'm working with a very nice female detective. You'd like her." "Damon's not here. He said if you called and weren't coming home, to tell you thanks a lot." I shook my head and finally smiled in spite of myself. "You got his inflection down perfectly. Where is he?" "He's playing basketball with his friends. He's very good at that, too. I think he'll be an outstanding two-guard. Have you even noticed?" "He has soft hands and a quick first step. Of course I've noticed. You know which friends he's out with?" "Of course I do. Do you?" Nana shot back. She was relentless when she was on the attack. "He's with Lewis and Jamal. He picks good friends." "Now I have to go now, Nana. Please give Damon and Johnny my love. Give little Alex a big hug." "Alex, you give them love and hugs yourself," she said. Then she hung up on me. She had never done that before. Well, she hadn't done it very often. I sat there, pinned to my chair, thinking over what had just been said, wondering whether or not I was guilty as charged. I knew that I had spent more time with the kids than a lot of fathers, but as Nana had so skillfully argued, they were growing up fast and without a mother. I had to do an even better job, and there were no goddamn excuses. I called home a few more times. There was no answer, and I figured I was being punished. I finally caught up with Damon around 6 that night. He had just gotten home from rehearsal for his concert with the boys' choir. I heard his voice come on the line, and I sang a little Tupac rap ditty he likes. He thought that was funny, so I knew everything was okay. He had forgiven me. He was a good boy, the best I could have hoped for. I suddenly remembered my wife, Maria, and was sad that she wasn't here to see how well Damon was turning out. "You would really like Damon, Maria. I'm sorry you're missing it." "I got your message. I'm sorry, Damon. I wish I were going to hear you tomorrow. You know I do. Can't be helped, buddy." Damon sighed dramatically. "If wishes had wings," he said. It was one of his grandmother's pet sayings. I had been hearing it for years, ever since I was around his age. "Beat me, whip me, beat me," I told him. "Nah, it's all right, Daddy," Damon said, and sighed again. "I know you have to work and that it's probably important stuff. It's just hard for us sometimes. You know how it is. I love you, and I should be there. And I won't miss the next concert," I said to him. "I'll hold you to that," Damon said. "I'll hold myself to it," I told him. Chapter 24. I was still at the precinct house in Brentwood at around 7:30 that night. I was tired, and finally looked up from a thick sheaf of police reports on the sadistic murders that had taken place in 9 West Coast cities, plus the one in D.C. that we knew about. The case was scaring the hell out of me, and certainly not because